Well, the Republican Party has radically changed. Once the party of Ronald Reagan, the GOP is now far from the Gipper's ideals. Next week, Republican candidates will gather at Reagan's Presidential Library for their second debate. CBN's David Brody takes a closer look at the party's march from Reaganism to populism.
The last time Republicans debated in Simi Valley, participants included then-candidate Donald Trump, one of the reasons the GOP is no longer considered the party of Reagan.
Today, a populist movement is rising in the Republican Party.
Former VP and presidential candidate Mike Pence prefers a return to those days of Reagan conservatism and opposes Trump's version of today's GOP.
In the days to come, will we be the party of conservatism? Or will we follow the siren song of populism, unmoored to conservative principles? The future of this movement and this party belongs to one or the other, not both.
Make no mistake, Donald Trump has changed the Republican Party, something retiring Senator Mitt Romney regrets.
Well, there's no question but that the Republican Party today is in the shadow of Donald Trump. He is the leader of the greatest portion of the Republican Party. It's a populist, I believe, demagogue portion of the party. Look, I represent a small wing of the party, if you will. I call it the wise wing of the Republican Party. And I don't believe we're going away. I think ultimately we'll see a resurgence and come back into leadership of the party.
That doesn't seem likely, because while Trump gets the credit, this version of the GOP has been developing over decades, and the statistics bear that out. Coming out of Reagan and into the Bush years, 62% of Republicans preferred to reduce the debt rather than protect entitlements. Now, only 29% feel that way. And back then, 53% felt America should be more active abroad. But after attempts at nation building and the post 9/11 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Republicans became fed up. And that number is much lower today at 24%. Steve Toth is a state senator from Texas.
It's been aided by 24/7 news coverage that has brought a lot of coverage to the industrial war complex that exists in Washington, D.C. in the Uniparty. And I think people are just sick and tired of it.
And the culture wars are far worse today than at any time in modern American history.
Ronald Reagan did not have to deal with critical race theory. Ronald Reagan didn't have to deal with the covert transitioning of our children in our public schools from male to female or female to male. Ronald Reagan didn't have to deal with abortion through not 9 months, but 10 months. And so there is an outrage in the United States that has called for a new kind of politician, a new kind of office holder that is not going to talk a good talk, but is actually going to have to deliver some results.
Enter Donald Trump marching toward a more blue-collar populist party that's also operating in a very different political environment. The days of working across the aisle are almost non-existent. Long gone are the days when Reagan and then Democrat House Speaker Tip O'Neill shared a cozy personal relationship.
One day I picked up the paper and read where he had made a statement about me that was pretty harsh. And I called him and I said, Tip, I thought we had a relationship here where we could do business together and all, and now I read in the paper that you said. And he interrupted me and said, well, old buddy, that's just politics. He said, after 6 o'clock, we're buddies, we're friends.
Along with the cordial relationships disappearing and trust in the federal government eroding, pessimism seems to rule the day now. While Reagan focused on the shining city on a hill, today 40% of Americans feel Republican leaders are mostly pessimistic when they talk about the country's future. To be clear, Reagan and Trump have two similar core underpinnings: champion traditional family policies with the mantra of less government.
I believe Ronald Reagan would have attacked these issues the same way that Donald Trump has. It would have been a little bit more nuanced, would have been a little friendlier, right? But he would have attacked it nonetheless the exact same way.
So what are we to make of the GOP's future? Will it be a full-on embrace of populism or something else?
I think when you look at these candidates, you see them all recognize the fact that the future of the right, the future of the Republican Party, is going to be some uneasy, sometimes complementary synthesis of Reagan conservatism and Trump populism.
And what that ends up as is anyone's guess. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Well, I'm not as concerned about the Republican Party as I am about the country. Is populism new to American politics? And the answer is quite clearly no. It goes all the way back to Andrew Jackson. So you can look back in our history, and yes, a populist candidate arose out of Tennessee and was swept into 8 years in Washington, D.C. as the president. So can that happen again? Yes. Will it happen again? Probably. But the bigger concern I have is how can we come together after elections? We just seem to be in election mode all the time. And, you know, there's never any attempt anymore to even sit down and talk and say, how can we solve the problems of this great nation? And how can we move forward as a nation? If the political divides get so great that you can't reach across the aisle, then I'll quote the Bible to you. A house divided cannot stand. Let's pray that we can finally find some kind of unity. But I'm not certain that we are even doing that. You know, we're focusing on how can we win, and instead we need to be focused on how can we govern this nation.